Welcome to Backroom Talk.
The bulk of our conversation today, Carl, is going to be more broadly around, we talked about it, contentment and fulfillment, and avoiding burnout in the fitness industry. And
I don't think it's noble to work 15 hours a day.
I mean, so many people get into fitness coaching, and I said this before, because fitness was powerful in some way to them. Is that passion itself enough?
Or I would look at Maslow's hierarchy. I think it's a really good framework.
To listen to more Backroom Talk, be sure to subscribe. Learn to design personalized programs with the OPEX system of coaching by heading to opexfit.com.
Okay, guys, well, welcome to another week of Backroom Talk, and our big old topic for today is going to be around contentment and fulfillment, and we're going to relate that to kind of a big problem in our industry, which is coach burnout and people getting into fitness, really excited to work in the industry, and then burning out a couple of years later. So we'll have some conversation around how do we actually create longevity in the fitness industry. But before that, Carl, I know you have an article you want to share with us.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like captured by that conversation right now because I know we talked about it before we hit record, but I have to shift my thinking back to this cocktail of ingredients.
Yes.
Was the name of the article, and it was an article that was on Today or something like that. And the idea was that there's a new study that says that you need to figure out ways to find balance in your physical activity and your inactivity, which of course this is what we talk about all the time, right? And it's interesting to understand what people in the general public, what their perceptions are of fitness and activity and wellness and longevity based on what news outlets and sources are putting out there. And this is one that just struck me, right? I saw the headline and I was like, it's interesting. Where we're at in our little bubble, when you pull up articles like this, it's you're immediately trying to find holes, right? You're okay, what are they saying that's misleading people? And in this one, I didn't really see anything that was misleading. It was a fairly well written article. There were some things on intense activity versus light activity where we would probably have a conversation around, but I don't think they meant intense activity in the way that we mean intense activity. They were thinking of intense activity back squatting in the gym is their version of intense activity. So outside of that, let me get into it really quick and give you a little bit of a recap.
Let's hear it.
So the study found that intense activity, light activity, and sitting in a right combination or using those ingredients effectively can actually decrease mortality rates. So the article said that 30 minutes per day in the gym is not enough. As we all know, that's 2% of your entire day. So it just it positioned the question of what do you do in the other 23 hours and 30 minutes? Because a lot of people follow the old adage of 5 days a week, 30 minutes on those 5 days. I'm going to do activity, intense activity, lift weights, run, whatever the case may be, and then I'm good. Right. And this study is challenging that. They're saying, no, actually, you also have to look at everything else you're doing around that 30 minutes of activity. Keep doing it, but maybe think about doing other things. So what they did was they took 6 studies that involved 130,000 people, and they wanted to understand how activity is associated with mortality rates. And what they came to the table with was activity ingredients. These activity ingredients associated with a 30% decrease in mortality rates. So ingredient number 1 was 55 minutes of exercise, 4 hours of light activity. So that's gardening, walking, whatever, and 11 hours of sitting, right? So a lot of exercise and a decent amount of sitting. The next piece was 13 minutes of exercise, a lot less exercise, 5.5 hours of light activity, and 10.3 hours of sitting. So less sitting, less exercise, quote unquote, and more light activity. And then ingredient number 3 is 3 minutes of exercise per day. I don't know what the hell those people are doing, but 3 minutes of exercise per day, 6 hours of light activity, and 9.7 hours of sitting. So you can kind of see it's like, what are you doing on a daily basis? If you add all of those numbers up, it's coming to a very similar outcome when you total, light activity and physical activity or and exercise. And then as exercise increases, you just see that those people sit more because intuitively they're like, I exercised a lot today. I can now afford to sit, which is true, right? It's like, they moved a lot of blood, they burned a lot of calories, and they still have light activity in their day. So outside of that, I think what we usually see, right? So what we usually see is 60, let's call it 45 to 75 minutes of intent activity, almost no light activity, and a lot of sitting, right? So they're saying the same stuff that we say all the time, right? It's like, look at lifestyle factors outside of what you do in the gym, right? Taking walks, being outdoors, sitting less, moving more, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was interesting that they had like those three avatars essentially that laid it out, and they were like, hey, we see over these 130,000 people that mortality rates decreased by 30% in these buckets. Outside of these buckets, they didn't decrease at all, or in some cases they actually increased. Your thoughts?
No, I think that it's fascinating to see that we wrap a lot of value around 55 minutes or 60 minutes of exercise in the gym, right? Like as fitness coaches, that's our bread and butter. We're really good at getting people to exercise with intent inside of the gym. What fitness coaches tend to be not so good at historically is getting people to do that 4 to 6 hours outside of the gym. But to see, backed by data, the idea that you can actually do less intentional movement inside of the gym, 55 minutes versus 13 minutes, and just increase light physical activity outside of the gym and get the same effects. That's really cool. Where I see it not being so actually implementable for people, and why that 55 minutes versus 13 minutes is valuable, is if people don't have an extra hour and a half or 2 hours to do live physical activity outside of the gym. So it's all well and good for us to say you only need to do 3 minutes of exercise so long as you're moving around for 6 hours. But if someone doesn't have 6 hours to do light physical activity, then spending 1 hour in the gym plus 4 hours, giving you that's like a 1 hour additional in your day to spend sitting or working or whatever you need to do. That's where actual intentional exercise inside of the gym seems to be really valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's definitely a lot of people, not a lot, there's definitely a percentage of people that don't have the time, and we're talking to coaches, right? It's like you have to talk to those people and you have to identify, do they actually not have the time? Because a lot of people will say, I don't have time to do that. And you can look at their schedule and you're like, hey, take that meeting on a walk. You know what I mean? It's like, that's an hour of physical activity, light physical activity that you just accomplished on that meeting that you could have easily taken on the phone instead of being on Zoom. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways to make that work. I get it if someone's like a security guard and they're sitting like at the front of this thing and they can't leave their post for 12 hours a day. I absolutely get that. But for most people, there's a little bit of wiggle room to fit in some physical activity, during meetings, between meetings. Physical activity isn't just going out and walking, right? It's like, there's a lot of people that have Pelotons. It's like, take a meeting on your Peloton. That's a very easy way to just move some blood and get some light physical activity. And so I think we just need to be more creative to implement boring shit. That's it, right? Because it's like a lot of people think that they don't have time because they think about, implementing light physical activity the same way that they think about implementing going to the gym and doing an intense session. So in doing that, you're like, okay, I have to get ready. I have to do this. I have to think about what I'm eating prior. I have to, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it doesn't have to be that big of a barrier. So it is a challenge to get people to do more boring stuff that they don't have to prepare as much for. But I think it's a noble and it's a good challenge for a lot of coaches.
Yeah, it's more preparation on the very front end, right? It's setting people up with work environments and with little accessories like Bluetooth headphones where they have the ability to sit on a bike while they take a meeting, or walk around their office while they're on a call because they're on Bluetooth headphones, so they're not like glued to their computer.
Yep.
It's little things like that you help people set up in the beginning that are going to allow them to integrate that movement throughout their day ongoing.
And for some people, standing is light physical activity.
Absolutely.
For some people that aren't used to standing for any amount of time, if they stand, that is more difficult than sitting for them, because they usually sit 12 hours a day, right? So it's personalized, right? But it's like, what is light physical activity for each person?
Definitely. What else was inside of this article, Carl? Any other key points to pull out?
I don't have the article in front of me. I have my notes, but I think I really like the last sentence. Do you have the article up?
I do, yeah.
Just read the last sentence. I read that and I was like, yeah, that's good. I like that.
He hoped the findings would make physical activity recommendations more accessible and attainable, but also help people realize it's not as simple as doing a workout and checking off the exercise box on their to-do list. It's best to just keep moving.
Oh, man.
That's
good. That's good. That's a good ending. I remember I read that last night. And I remember I got to that last sentence and I was like, oh, man, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, seriously. One little thing that I thought was interesting inside of the article was there was a line that was related to researchers not really understanding why being sedentary for 11 to 12 hours a day might undo the helpful effects of a workout. And we kind of looked at each other and smirked, right?
Yeah.
And you said it like we're not exactly clear on what the reasons are for that, but you kind of like add 2 and 2 together and you think about the positives of blood flow and moving blood around your body throughout the day versus like sitting and getting stagnant, and it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I think there's a million reasons, right? There's a million benefits to moving blood. But I think studies like this, they always look at like, the metabolic benefits or disbenefits. And that's where they talked about like the blood sugar piece, where it's like, active muscle tissue in the body acts as a buffer to regulate blood sugar inside of the system. So, I think they always look at the metabolic pieces, but there's a lot of other things outside of metabolics that just moving can be really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean the one that comes to mind as well that gets a lot of popularity is the concept of NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and like in reality, we have this caloric balance where if you're consuming more than you're burning, you're probably going to put on weight, and vice versa. So for people that are potentially trying to shed a little bit of body fat to, fall into healthy normative parameters, doing activity outside of the gym can be really beneficial for that too.
Yeah. My last point that is an extension of that point is even like people that coach clients in nutrition, whether they're exercise coach or they're just a nutrition coach. I think a lot of them don't think about that point where it's like, hey, your weight didn't go down this week. We had our check-in on Monday. Instead of decreasing calories, maybe just add a 30-minute walk. It's like, hey, let's add this 30-minute walk for, 3 weeks, and let's recheck in and see where you're at.
Yeah.
With no other variable changing. That's a powerful prescription for someone to go out for an additional 30 minutes every single day and go on a brisk walk. Like that's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, from a weight loss perspective, there are the benefits of, improved fitness and blood flow and everything else, but it also doesn't come with that like potential stressful, okay, I've got to, cut out 100 calories from somewhere and I'm already hungry, effect of, removing calories from someone's profile.
Yep. Jesse O'Brien, if you're watching, or if anyone knows Jesse O'Brien, can you guys please send us one of those Central Athlete
the Make Walking Cool t-shirts?
Yeah, one of those t-shirts. Yeah. If you want to, I'm a large. George is a medium. Small.
Yeah. Careful there.
I thought you were. No, you've been doing a lot of. I'm trying to save myself.
I'm leaning out.
Yeah,
Carl.
she's been pumping those
Look,
weights.
It depends on the shirt, but typically a small.
Okay, cool. All right.
We'll move on from that uncomfortable statement. It's cool. I'm not worried about that.
I'm okay. Hey.
You were definitely uncomfortable right then.
No, I was just trying to protect myself here.
Okay. This is for the best. Well, the bulk of our conversation today, Carl, is going to be more broadly around we talked about it, contentment and fulfillment, and avoiding burnout in the fitness industry, and just like how to have a good life as a fitness coach more broadly.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's start with maybe identifying some like issues, barriers, problems, whatever that is. Like when you hear burnout, or you hear the word I used was like failure. We see a lot of burnout and failure in the fitness industry on the coaches side. We see that shit in every industry, right? It's like there's no industry where someone goes in as a profession and 100% of people succeed, but we care more about it, I guess, in the fitness industry. What are the first things that come to your mind when you hear burnout and failure, like the reasons why people experience those?
Yeah, I guess for starters, like I have this statistic that I hear in my head that I've seen like quoted over and over again around like 90% of personal trainers burning out within their two first years in the industry. And so that always comes to mind for me. But I just think about someone who is working really, really hard, like long hours, and they're really trying to make it happen. They love fitness. They're passionate about it. They love working out. It was really beneficial for them in their life at some point, and they want to share that with other people so badly. They're working from 5 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. at night for an hourly wage, and they're doing it for a while, and they're running on adrenaline, and they feel like they're making an impact, and then they just like hit a wall, and they're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted, and I'm not making any more money than I was a year ago, and I don't see any opportunity for growth unless I somehow get up 2 hours earlier and take on more clients. And I just am going to go work as a real estate agent because I know I can, make a good commission doing that instead. And I need to put braces on my kids and feed my family.
Ooh, that's a lot. A lot in there.
There was.
Yeah, to me that sounds like a coach that's chasing fulfillment, right? Like what you just described. But a part of that, of what you just described, was like it hit home because that was me, right? Like the last year and a half, 2 years of my military career, I owned 3 gyms at that same time, right? So my mornings were very early and my evenings were really late. And we had a kid at the time, a year into the future, we had another one coming. So that was me. I was just like grinding, but in my head, I knew there was like an end to it, right? I was doing it for a reason. I wasn't doing it because I thought I just really loved it, right? And like there was no end in sight. To me, it was like, yeah, I got a little bit of time left in the military. This is a great opportunity for me to get ahead, quote unquote, financially, keep all the really good benefits of being in the military. We made really good money in the military. We had a really nice house and all of those things. So it was like a buffer for us where I was like, hey, I'm gonna grind, right? So I talked to Janice about it, and it was like, hey, the next little bit's gonna be a little bit rough, but this is what it's gonna look like after. So there was fulfillment in there for sure. It's like I that's why I was transitioning, to do that full time, because I loved it, right? Like it was what I really wanted to do. But I wasn't blind to the fact that I couldn't do that thing forever. And I only say that because I see a lot of coaches, or I have seen a lot of coaches that were blind to the fact that they couldn't do that thing forever. Or we'll get on, mentor calls with gym owners, and it's like, what does this thing look like for you? And they're just like, I don't see a way out of it. I'm working 13 hours a day. I'm doing this all by myself. I'm not making enough money to feed my family for any amount of time. I don't know what to do. So what they think they need to do is do exactly what they're doing, but just do it fucking harder, right? And it's like that's where it gets weird. And it's like, hey, you can't continue to do the things that aren't working today and expect a different outcome, right? So it's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at what's going really well right now, what's not going well right now. Let's look at reality. Let's look at the things you need to do to stay above water. And if that goes against you being fulfilled, maybe you have to do those things for an amount of time, suck it up, but that end has to be in sight. So, yeah, I think a lot of coaches, listening to this, or, a lot of coaches that we've spoken to, you talk to these coaches all the time, right? When they call you interested in CCP. Gosh, it's the same story over and over. And the reality is we don't have the answer, no one has the fucking answer, right? It's like we can give some advice based on experience and the things that we believe and just be an ear, right? But like we don't have like the golden nugget that's going to get 100% of coaches to see success, right? It's like we have a roadmap that has worked for a lot of coaches, but I'll stop there because now we're getting into like, you know, what the fitness business industry is telling all of these coaches, you know, through social media and, you know, this is the way forward and we have the answer. But I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think the reality is the answer looks different for everybody. And we talk about that in fitness and in, you know, what we do in the gym and in life and in nutrition, but it's the same thing in business. Mm-hmm. We all want something a little bit different out of our careers, and what fulfills someone is going to be different from the other person. There are some people that are highly motivated by having great relationships and doing work that they find to be really fulfilling. And then there are other people that want to collect a paycheck and do things outside of the gym and find happiness in that. So, or outside of work, I should say, and find happiness in that. So I think coaches need to like sit down and look at what they actually want out of their careers first.
Yeah. Which is hard. And, you know, most coaches don't have the answer to that. That's the reality of it. They have to understand that getting to that answer is a very long process. It's a very long process. Gosh, I'm 35 years old. You're like 20 something. What are you, 28? No? 28. You know, we're at different points in our lives professionally, right? And it's like, if you sat both of us down and you're like, where will you be in 20 years? We won't have the answer to that.
We talked about that out there the other day.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that you have the answer to where you're going to be. So it's always this balance as, you know, professionals in anything. It's always a balance of like being okay, right? Being okay with where you're at right now, if it's where the hell you want to be. If you don't want to be there, don't be okay with it. But being okay with where you are right now and being okay with not knowing where you're going to be a decade from now, right? Like you want to have an idea, right, of the path that you want to go down, whether that's an industry, whether that's a feeling, whether that's what we'll talk about in a minute, fulfillment, whatever that is, it's okay. But you have to be good with not rushing and not having the exact answer of what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it.
Yeah. I mean, so many people get into fitness coaching, and I said this before, because fitness was powerful in some way to them. They had a transformative experience through fitness. They see the value of exercise and they want to share that with other people. Is that passion itself enough to keep someone going as a fitness coach forever? Like, you know, you think about struggling artists who never really make any money, but they love what they do and, you know, they pour all their energy into the canvas. Yep. Can a fitness coach be like that, just driven by passion alone?
Yeah. Well, driven by passion alone? I think so. Yeah. Driven by, but their actions can't be all based on passion. I think we're all driven by passion, but there's stuff that we need to do on a day-to-day basis that aren't exactly aligned with our passion. Those are things that we need to do to continue moving forward. So yeah, drive versus action, I think, are two different things. If everything you do is based on that passion, probably not, right? I don't think a coach is going to succeed, but if that drive is there, I think so.
Yeah, I think as well, even if you do love what you do and you're passionate about it, there's going to be some monotony in it. It's not always going to be 100% enjoyable. Like your day isn't always going to be amazing. You're not always going to be like, you know, strolling along rainbows and just having a great time, even if you love what you do. I remember right as I was like making the decision to start coaching and like pursue that as a goal, I was talking to the head coach of our gym, the gym that I started coaching at the time. And I like kind of looked at him and I was like, you come in and you coach in the morning, and then you come in and you coach in the afternoon, and in the middle of the day, you just like work out and you hang out. That sounds amazing. Like so cool. Little did I know, like, you know, a couple years on, that gets a little repetitive and sometimes a little bit boring, which is okay. But
for you, I know people that have done that for decades and they're okay with it.
Yeah. It is personal though. It is totally personal. But even those people that are okay with it, again, they're not like having a 10 out of 10 great time every single day. There are going to be moments of their day that feel a little bit more monotonous, or repetitive, or just they're tired or a little hungover and they didn't feel like going to work today, even if they're lit up by what they do.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. Thinking back to those days, yeah, I used to. God, I lived that schedule for a lot of years. Coming into the gym really early. There was a time where I coached really early in the mornings, and then the latter end of my gym ownership, I only coached like, an hour and a half a day. But it was like coming in and just bullshitting with people, you know, connecting with people, having meetings throughout the day, education, outside of gym meetings, training a lot. That was it, right? And I never didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never didn't enjoy it. But my basic needs were met.
Yeah.
If my basic needs weren't met, I would not have enjoyed that. I would have been stressed out. I would have been always looking at where I can make another dollar. I would have had to go home and tell my wife why I wasn't providing for our family. That's real shit, right? So I think might be a good transition, but I think that's where we need to think about how we need to meet our basic human needs before we chase fulfillment.
What are our basic human needs?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna use someone that's a lot smarter than me to lay this out, and we would look at, or I would look at Maslow's hierarchy. I think it's a really good framework to assess where we're at and where we want to go against. And at the bottom of that hierarchy, we have just survival, right? What do we need to do to survive? When we start to think about that today, it's a lot different than what it was even 100 years ago. But it's like we need food, we need water, we need money, we need money to survive, right? Like our basic survival needs met, right? It's like, cool, those are met. Now we go to the next stage. It's like, do we have safety? Right? Safety means something different to someone in a third world country than it does to us here in Arizona, right? But we look at, do we have safety? The physical place where we live. Are we afraid to put our kids to bed? Like there's some places that they put their kids in bathtubs because they're afraid of rockets hitting their homes or bullets coming in and hitting their kids, right? They don't have that safety need met because they're thinking about it. It's always on their mind. Are we safe? And financial security is a part of that as well, right? So it's like money does actually matter at the end of the day because we need it. And then as we move up, we have the belonging piece, right? Where it's like, do I belong to a part of a community, or do I belong to something that's bigger than myself, or do I have good relationships, right? It's like, do I have someone that I can talk about my feelings with? Do I have someone that I can bounce ideas off of? And those are like real things, right? So 1, 2, 3, it's like check. Now it's like, are my basic esteem needs met? Like, do I feel good about myself? Do I feel that other people feel good about me? Do I have confidence, right? Like we always talk about that in coaching, right? Am I confident in what I'm doing as a coach? Do I think what I provide can actually help other people, right? Like you have to meet all of those things before you can even think about self-fulfillment, right? So we see it a lot. I mean, everyone sees it a lot across every profession where people are trying to go straight to fulfillment before those basic human needs are met. And where does that end up? That ends up with an unsustainable career because the person doesn't have enough money to survive. They don't have enough money to create a safe environment around them or to feel safe before they go to bed. And remember, the safety is connected to financials as well. Like that is one of the most it's just such a major stressor. Financial stress is a real thing for a lot of people that can really take a lot of people down. So just really understanding that those needs are met before you're chasing that fulfillment is a really important thing to think about.
So let's walk through what that looks like for a fitness coach. What does it mean for a fitness coach to be looking after their basic needs, their relationships, esteem, and then ultimately fulfillment? So at the very base,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's obvious, right? They've got to have food and water to drink. They've got to be making a good income. But what does it mean to have financial security as a fitness coach or a gym owner?
Yeah, that depends on the person. Financial security to me is different than financial security to you, right? Like We have different views on money and all of that stuff. I think every, two people have different views on money and security, but real life scenario and where we see it play out is perfect example. Emma and I just filmed The Professional last week, and we were talking about full-time versus part-time coaches. And we talked about our definition of a professional coach. And a full-time coach is a part of that definition. Like, you have to be, in our opinion, you have to be a full-time coach to be deemed a professional, right? In this profession. What does that mean, right? That doesn't mean you listen to that video and you're like, fuck all my basic needs. Carl just said I have to do this thing full time. I'm going to quit my job and go all in. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Remember what we just talked about. Can you feed yourself? Do you have financial security? Is there a pathway forward with you here, right? So coaches going all in too early, I think is something that happens a lot because the barrier for the last 12 years has been so low to get into this profession full time. And to get into this profession full time as an owner, right? Remember like the box spin ups where it was like, take the seminar, open the gym. If you build it, they will come. The cream will rise to the top. Blah blah blah. It's like we saw a lot of shit, right, come out of that. A lot of people quit their jobs and said, "Fucking love fitness. I'm gonna do this thing full time. I'm gonna go all in." And a number of those people's basic needs financially weren't met. So where were they? Remember, I just walked through like how I felt on a daily basis. I felt really good owning a gym. I wouldn't have if I didn't have money. So we see a lot of coaches that were in the same exact scenario that I was in, but they just weren't making money. And that's a lot less enjoyable of an experience if you're doing anything and it's not paying off and you're getting to allocations at the end of the month and you look at that profit number and there's parentheses around it, meaning that you just fucking lost money. That's a tough pill to swallow. So I can only imagine how coaches feel or owners feel on a month-by-month basis when they're paying to coach people. They're losing money. That's what it is. You're paying to own a business. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, working out 3 hours a day and doing a little coaching education and like kissing babies and having meetings, that stuff's not fun if you're thinking about the fact that you're losing dollars while you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing to lose money for an amount of time if you see the forest through the trees and you understand that eventually you're going to be in the black, right? But you can't live your entire life in the red or losing money. So yes, there is some sweat equity that needs to be paid forward before a lot of people can see the fruits of their labor, but don't use that as an excuse. Don't get 24 months, 36 months down the road and you're like, my savings is gone and I'm still losing money. That shit has to tell you something.
Yeah. So this is the gym owner. What about the coach they're trying to go full time, right? They want to have a full roster of clients. They want to be able to pay all their bills just by coaching, but they can't do it right now. Like they just can't. What options do they have?
Do it part-time with the intentions of eventually doing it full-time.
Yeah.
Right? I work at, not me, obviously, but I work at Verizon Wireless, right? I'm selling cell phones, right? And it's like, I want to coach as well. It's like, okay, when am I going to do it? It's like, when is the time going to be perfectly right? Never, A. B, you have to have a plan to get from Verizon Wireless selling cell phones to coaching full time. That plan might be a year. That plan might be 2 years. I don't know. But it's like, I'm here, I'm selling cell phones, and I'm coaching 5 people, right? Now that's 8 people. Now that's 11 people. Now I'm starting to think like, ooh, okay. Now I'm starting to weigh, my Verizon commission versus my coaching commission. And now I'm starting to formulate this plan. It's like I need to understand in my head, okay, what is my goal? Where do I want to go? What's that client number that I'm going to get to before I say, okay, I'm going in and I'm doing this thing full time? That's what coaches need to think about. And that shit is so simple because at the end of the day, both of those things, the Verizon paycheck and the coaching paycheck, I can look at those things at the end of the month and compare them, right? I need to have an idea in my head when this goes to this number, I'm going to quit and shut this thing down. And maybe, I can sell cell phones half-time while I coach almost full-time on this side, right? So it doesn't need to be like flip it off, flip it on. It could be a transition that looks like coaching's here, Verizon's here. I don't know why I keep using Verizon. Can we do that? Is that cool?
I think so.
Verizon coaching, and it's like boop, 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 and then this thing goes away, right? I don't know how long that takes for that coach, but you just got to sit down and formulate a plan.
Yeah, but that's the key, right? And a lot of people don't have great visibility or just, even think about their personal finances and what they have going out on a monthly basis and what they need coming in to meet their basic needs. So it starts with identifying that.
Yeah.
You gotta sit down. You gotta create a personal budget for yourself. You gotta understand, if I have X number of clients, I'm going to be making Y. If I'm paying taxes, this is how it's going to affect me. And, this is what it's going to look like for me to not be in the red anymore.
Yep. Yeah.
But not many people do that.
No, I think a lot of people are afraid of money.
Yeah.
I think people are afraid of money, and people are afraid of seeing the truth, because the truth can be an ugly thing for some people. But sometimes when we look at the truth, it's a lot better than what we thought in our head. You know what I mean? So I think people are just really afraid of understanding exactly what's happening with their financials, right? Whether that's personal financials, professional financials. They're just like, I need to get in a better spot before I look at it. You know what I mean? So it's like, let me get 10 more clients paying this amount of money, and then I'll get into understanding my financials. It's like, getting 10 more clients paying X amount of dollars may not be important. If you understand where you're at financially, you might be in a good place financially, right? Maybe your thoughts and ideas should go somewhere else. So I think that's always the first step, no matter what someone's doing, is understanding where their money is.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about money and creating security through that. What about relationships and belonging? What does a coach need to do there to feel secure and have that need met so that they can then transcend beyond that?
Yeah. Gosh, that would have to be a very individual conversation, I think, right? Because just like we laid out, financials for you and I would be different. Actually, we might be the same. Our belonging characteristics might be the same. Like, I don't need to have 15 really good relationships. I need to have like one or two. Yeah. And I'm really good with that. You know what I mean? We talked about what's the amount of time you could just sit in quarantine all by yourself and be okay with it. I think our answer is probably a lot longer than most people's answers. So that sense of belonging that's definitely personalized, right? And that showed, right, over the pandemic, where, you read it every day, right? It's like mental health issues from not having that connection and losing those relationships and all of that stuff. So I think that's very personal.
It is, for sure. I can think of an example, though, of, grinding it out in the early days of coaching. And that looks like, again, being at the gym from 5 a.m. in the morning and coming home at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And I was newly married when I was, transitioning into full-time coaching. And I was really, really busy. And I didn't have a whole lot of time for my husband.
Yep.
And Jacob is different to me. He is definitely someone that really values having a lot of close relationships, or a lot of acquaintances as well. He feeds off other people's energy, and he needed that from his wife as well. But his wife was out of the house, Monday through Saturday for a crazy number of hours. And that was tough on him. And, for me, looking after my relationships means looking after that relationship primarily. And I had to figure out, how can I not be out of the house for this extended period of time so I can be there for my significant other, to create security in that relationship.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, 'cause you see a lot of relationships lost and business ownership as well because of that. There's a lot of business owners or people that get into this, new profession, or these high achieving individuals that are like the, 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. people, and they don't give a shit about anything else, right? Like, they just see that carrot of a lot of hard work equals success, and they never look at those relationships. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think about detached caring as well, because we're in the business of relationships. And as a young coach, it's very easy to go into every one of those relationships and put your whole heart and whole energy into that and be so invested in it and let it crush you. And when it doesn't work out like you wanted it to.
Yeah.
So learning how to create that separation is another really, I think, important step in the fitness coach's development to look after that relationship area.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I always had an issue with that. I like overcared for a lot, like for way too many people. That might have been why I was very successful though. Don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I don't have like an N=2 where I was like super into detached caring versus not, but I was always bad at that. I was bad at detaching, the service and the relationship and all of that stuff. But yeah, I think that is good advice, right? And I think we have to identify what the heck detached caring is. Detached caring isn't not giving a shit about people. Detached caring is giving a shit about people, but not letting it affect you when you leave that room or leave that gym and go home and you're in bed with your husband or wife and you can't even speak to them because you're thinking about the conversation that you had with your client. That happens sometimes, right? But we have to fight. We have to fight so that doesn't become us, where we're like, and every turn we're like with our kids and we're thinking about this conversation we just had with our client, a week ago that's still, festering and bothering us. To me, that's a really good thing to strive toward. I think some coaches look at detached caring as like, well, I'm here to do one thing. You might have problems. Fuck it. I know best because I don't care. Like, I think some coaches misinterpret the idea of detached caring.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But just learning not to ride the roller coaster with people 24/7 and being able to step off when you need to for your own well-being is important.
Yep. Yeah, I think the next piece would be the esteem.
Yeah,
I think that's something that's so important for us and so important for new coaches, is feeling good about yourself and what you're doing. It starts with truly believing in what you do and truly believing in what you do, and those things that they can actually help the other person on the other end. Like what you're providing is a lot of value. So I think it starts there, and then a continuation of that is trusting in your skills. To the starting point in trusting in your skills is to be well enough educated. I wanted to be really careful in how I position that, because education can come in so many different ways for so many different people. Education can come through just doing for some people. Education can come through 8 years of undergrad plus master's program. Education can come through coming through CCP, right? Education can come through a lot of different ways, but learning and then feeling really good about the stuff that you learned and not always thinking about what the next person knows. There's always someone out there that is smarter than us. Always. I don't care how good you are at anything. Well, obviously, look at an Einstein or something like that. Yeah, you're good. You're at the top. But, if you're listening to this, there's someone that's smarter than you. For sure, right? We're not the best at anything we do. That's reality. We're not the best at anything we do. So you got to be okay with that. Got to be okay with it.
Yeah, you got to look at the environment that you're in and the people that you're working with and ask yourself, do I have the education I need to give these people a service I believe in and do right by them and give them something that's going to benefit them in this moment? And I think a lot of the time the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But coaches doubt themselves because they're not thinking about the people that they're around. They're thinking about that unicorn client that they might one day want to work with, or high-level athletes. But when they realistically evaluate their client pool and the people that they stand to make a real impact with, it's the basics that are going to get them there.
Yeah.
Education is great as a means to validate the basics over time. So you start to investigate, but I think even the smartest person returns back to those principles and those basics and those fundamentals, despite, what they learn.
Yeah. I mean, unless that client that you're talking about is like this, uber elite Olympic athlete at the top, a very top of their game, most of the coaches that we're talking to, they're speaking to a client that just read that Today story that we just walked through and learned something from it. Right? Like we look at that sometimes and we're like, yeah, that's so obvious. That's just stupid. Why would I spend time even talking or reading that thing? But it's like, it's not obvious to most people. You know what I mean? Like there's people that read that and they're just like, oh my, like they may have been inspired to, walk an additional 30 minutes a week because they're walking 0 right now, right? It's like that kind of stuff is going to make a really big impact across a much larger population set than understanding exactly how to, prescribe, daily undulating periodization in reality. So it is the basics, because most normal human beings just need the basics, and they need to be very, very consistent in implementing the basics in their day to day.
Yeah, and those people, even if they're aware of the basics and like the fact that moving more throughout the day is good, they don't actually know how to do it. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about a fitness coach, is being able to come in and work with that individual and give them tactics that they can do based on their resources, based on what they enjoy, based on, how their day runs.
Yeah, you're meeting them exactly where they are.
That's
like the
shit
that we always say, right? Yeah, no, that's it though.
The other piece there, I think you've got to really believe in what you're doing. And we're a little bit biased in what we believe is the best way to deliver people their ideal version of fitness. And inside of that ideal version of fitness looks different for everyone. And that's the basic tenet. But we do think that, an individually designed program is the best thing that a coach can kind of stand behind when compared to something like that fitness app that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So you got to believe in what it is you're selling. Otherwise, how can you be confident in it?
Yep. And the reason why we say that, though, isn't because what we say and how we implement is smarter than anyone else in terms of like the pieces inside of each prescription. It's just because we're meeting the person where they are. That's it. So you look at, if we threw an individually designed training program on the screen right now for Emma, like if we put today's training session up right now. Do you train today, Emma? Yeah. So if we put Emma's training session up today, you wouldn't look at that and be like, that's the best fucking program I've ever seen, right? Because you have no context, but that might be the best program right now for Emma. That's the beauty of it, right? Like you can look at it A, B, and a coach might look at that and be like, that's lower order, that's dumb, right? But it's like without context, how do we know? Highest order training program could be 45-minute walk outside at noon. You know what I mean? If that's that person's ideal version of fitness for that day, that's great. It doesn't need to be nuanced.
Yeah, exactly. And just to like reiterate what you said right there, coaches often look at that and they think it's too simple and they lose confidence because they think what they see on the paper is too simple to be the smartest, best program ever. But if they step back and they look at it in context of being the program for Emma or whoever their client is that they're writing it for, they're going to realize that they're doing just fine.
Yeah. We're, I know we like to think that we are, but humans aren't that complex in the way that we think about things. And we're definitely not that complex in the way that we want to perform or implement things. Our brains tell us that we should be more complex on the coach's side. Why? To increase engagement, right? That's it. But if you have like a overly engaging training and nutrition and lifestyle program, or versus almost a set it and forget it for the client, where it's like, yeah, that's easy, I can do that. Where are you going to see success in 5 years, right? Like if client A has 15 things they need to do on a daily basis versus 2, that person that's doing 2 is going to do those 2 things for a lot longer than that client that has 15 things to do. So as a coach, you have to understand that. And I think what we need to try to get to as coaches is to try to give people a lot less that have a lot more impact. Give them essential things instead of just things.
Yeah. And you've said this before on this podcast, Carl, but like as a coach, you have to have a vision for what your goal is, overarching for all of your clients. All of your clients are going to have different specific fitness goals, but you have to personally know what you're working all of those people towards. And it could be something like consistency in fitness 5 years from now, creating autonomy so that they just know what they need to do. It'll be a little bit different for everyone, but I think that's where we typically go.
Absolutely. Yeah, so maybe let's end it on where we began this thing and talking about contentment versus fulfillment.
Yeah.
How would you identify or define contentment?
I think it's being okay with just having enough and not like constantly searching for more. It's realizing like I've got these basic needs met and I'm not at fear for a lack of safety. My relationships are sound and I have what I need to be content on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to always be striving for more.
Perfect. Yeah, I was just going to say being happy with exactly where you are today. Being happy with it. To me, happiness isn't like overly joyed. To me, happiness is contentment, right?
Yeah.
So a way that I've, talked about it before is like, you're content if when you lay down at the end of the night and you think about life and you think about your day and you think about everything, you say, okay, yeah, that was fine. Not, hey, that was fucking awesome. It's like, hey, yeah, that was fine. That was good. That's contentment to me. Being unhappy is lying in bed and thinking like about all the things you need to do differently, the things you don't like, challenges that you're facing in life in general that you just can't get over and you think about every single night before you go to bed. That's someone that's probably not content with life. So yeah, I think contentment is just like you lay down and you're good.
Yeah. As humans, and I think Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow talked about this, but we are very influenced by our peak experiences and the experiences that happened most recently to us. And if we look only at the peaks, the massive highs, and then also like the massive like depressions and lows, we're going to very easily get caught up defining ourselves as like an overly joyous or really sad person.
Yeah.
But if we think about like what's our average experience and like what does it look like throughout the day, what's our status quo, then yeah, that really is like looking for contentment and not looking for this massive high all the time, because you can't ride on that. Like you just can't be up all the time. And if you are, eventually you're going to crash.
Yeah. And naturally we have rhythms, right? Like, no human being lays down every night and they're just like good. But when we start to look at like the averages of, highs versus lows versus I'm just goods, we should have more I'm just goods to be like, I'm a content person. And I think, just to be clear, I think everyone should be striving to have a content life. That doesn't mean settling. That doesn't mean like, I'm not going to strive for anything because I'm content. I'm just saying, while we're pushing the envelope and whatever the hell it is that we're pushing the envelope in, that may be fulfillment, that may mean growth, that may mean taking your company from here to here. You should be content along the way. Like, I don't think you should be overly up or overly down for any long period of time. But naturally, we'll go through rhythms where we're down and when we're up.
What are some strategies for finding contentment and also pursuing growth and not being stagnant?
Gosh, yeah, I think it starts with understanding what growth means to you. I think everyone needs to be very purposeful, and by that there needs to be a level of reflection that has to occur. There needs to be experience that happens. That's what I think a lot of people miss. Experience needs to happen before you can reflect on anything. Because if you're just like a thinker and you're just like always sitting back and thinking and you're never doing things, or you're never trying things, you don't actually ever have an opportunity to reflect on anything. So I think you need to be very purposeful. I think you need to get rid of noise. And I kind of mentioned it before, but like the things that you need to identify what is essential in your life. We have a lot of opportunities to make a lot of different choices, and we can say yes to a lot of things and we can say no to a lot of things. But I think we need to understand what's essential, and we need to learn how to say no a little bit more. And I think it has a lot to do with, in that purposeful sense, understanding why you're doing this certain thing that you're doing, like really. And I'm not saying like a woo-woo, like, oh, we all have to have this like purpose that we wake up with and we read this thing every day. But I'm just saying like we have to have a level of purpose in our lives. We have to. That purpose will likely shift a couple times for people. But I think people always have to be like working towards something, even if it's not a tangible thing. That may have not answered your question, but
No, I
yeah,
think it did.
I think people just have to be purposeful.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned at first you need to have experience first to reflect on, but activities like meditation, like journaling, like sitting down and just taking stock of your day on a daily basis, I think all of those things can be helpful, like actual tactics for realizing, am I content or not?
Yeah. And learn from those experiences though. It's really easy to like, meditation's a weird thing to me. Not calling meditation weird, but it's weird to like identify what meditation really is. It's hard to like define it. But whatever that person's definition of meditation is, they have to understand, is it working? If the goal of meditating is to like clear your mind and just like not think of anything for an amount of time, it's like that's how you measure success in your meditation. If you're meditating to lower your blood pressure or something like that, and like have like this qualitative measure on stress levels on a daily basis, it's like, cool, you need to measure that. If you're taking stock of your day, you need to understand why you're doing that, and you have to have a goal and why you're taking stock of your day. I take stock in my day to understand, what I can get rid of, like the things that waste time. Because imagine taking stock of your day and be like, you're like, need to go to the grocery store, need to sit down and have this podcast, it's like you're wasting that time because you're going to do those things anyway. Yep. So be purposeful in how you take stock of your day and have a reason why you're doing it.
Yeah, I think I know that I'm content if I can go on a long walk and just enjoy my walk and not be stewing on a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
That's always a good little litmus test for how are my contentment levels right now.
Yeah. What's fulfillment to you?
Fulfillment would be striving to fill some kind of a need, to, feel that like void of, am I achieving my purpose with something more?
Yeah.
It's trying to fill something in that isn't there right now. I'm searching for something more in my life to make me feel happy. And once I achieve this thing, then I'm going to feel fulfilled.
Yeah. I think it's that as well as an action that you're doing on a daily basis to fill your fulfillment bucket. Fill your fulfillment bucket. Yeah. So it's like in coaching, it's like having a consultation and coaching people is so fulfilling. So I do that every single day, and I'm just like filling this bucket of fulfillment. I like that. I'm not a huge fan of trying to tangibly chase fulfillment, like this end thing where it's like, this is the thing I'm chasing, like fulfillment, and I'm going there, but I'm not experiencing any fulfillment along the way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's like the I'll be happy when.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of enjoying the moment that you're in right now.
Exactly.
And coming back to like the basic needs, you have to like define what are the contingencies that I need to look after to be content. And there are some things that you need to look after to be content. You need to have a basic amount of money to look after your needs. You need food, you need good relationships, you need a level of esteem. But after that, there's other things that you can chase that you shouldn't be defining your happiness against, but that you can still work and grow towards to achieve that level of fulfillment.
Yeah. Oof. What is fulfillment to you?
Ooh. What is fulfillment to me? I haven't like really sat down and thought about that, and I probably should have like prior to this podcast.
Or just in life. It's probably important for life.
Yeah,
to think about that
too.
Stuff too.
I know. I think fulfillment for me is definitely connected to myself and helping myself and others experience life through fitness. So very much connected to what we do here at OPEX, and just letting more people, and I include myself in that, be able to have that physical expression and get the other benefits that come from that, the mental and, psychological and emotional and spiritual benefits that come from being more connected to your physical body.
That's good.
What about you?
Ooh. Mine's probably like, I can go down rabbit holes, but I think there's two big themes. I know there's two big themes. Theme number one is always leaving things better than I found it. That's like everything, right? Like that's like big stuff, and it's also small stuff, right? Like that can be me going into the kitchen and leaving it better than I found it, right? Or big, like me leaving OPEX better than I found it. So that's something I think about quite often. And then number 2 is lifting others above myself.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot as well. And I think that's something that can be something really small or something really big. But I always think about those 2 things. And if I feel like I'm doing those 2 things, that's fulfillment to me.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're bringing up something that like always sat with me through coaching, but that sits with me through CCP calls and like my interactions in the office here as well. And that is being a positive influence on other people's days. Like, how can I make this day better for this person through our interaction than it would have been otherwise?
Yeah.
And even on days where I was like a little bit tired in the gym or was a little bit hungover or just had like coached every class for 8 weeks plus like for a week plus a bunch of PTs because no one else was in town. Like even on those weeks, if I could focus on being a positive in the people around me's day, then it was all worthwhile.
Yeah. There you go. That's what I was looking for, something like that. Yeah. That's good.
I found it.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, on my 2 points, you might have noticed those are like not about myself, and that's why I have to be extremely intentional in taking care of myself. So that's why I'm always like I'm always deliberately ensuring that I'm looking after myself, my health, my time, what I do, what I don't do, all of that. So those are very deliberate because it doesn't come natural to me. And I think a lot of people would look at it the other way. They'd be like, oh yeah, he's like a very like, do person. Naturally, it's like I'm not naturally. That's why I have to do it very, very deliberately. So yeah, it's enough about me.
No, it's good. I like to hear it. I'm sure the listeners do too. I have one last little thought that I want to like play out a little bit. And it comes down to this notion of like being very busy. And we began this conversation talking about like what is coach burnout. You often think about that coach that is working really long hours. Their day is jam-packed. They've got a bunch going on. We're pretty busy people, right?
Yep.
But I think there's a really big difference between being busy and doing a bunch of different things and then feeling stressed out by those things.
Yep.
And you can have a very busy day from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. But if you're content, you're going to be okay.
Yep.
If you're striving for some external fulfillment and you're not content with the now, that busy day is going to become really, really stressful.
Yeah. Oof. I have very strong feelings about being busy. Very, very strong feelings.
Do you want to share any of them?
We may not have enough time. But I'll say this. I think we need to figure out ways in life to be less busy. I think a lot of time people are filling their days with bullshit because they feel like they need to, and it makes them feel good for them to say, I'm a really busy person. I don't think it's noble to work 15 hours a day. I'll never do it. I won't do that. That's just not me. That's not my personality. I used to do it, but I learned a lot. And we just talked through it, right? Like, the grind and all that. It's like, we live one life. This life is not that long. When you sit on your deathbed, anyone sits on their deathbed, they're never going to be like, I wish I was just more busy in my life. I wish I didn't take time to do things that were really important to me or my friends or my family. It's like, I think people are intentionally busy these days, and I think it's bullshit. Maybe we'll talk about it deeper in a different conversation. Yeah, that's
part 2 of this one,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, as always, please make sure you leave us a review, subscribe, hit that thumbs up button if you're listening on YouTube. We appreciate you very much.
Thanks, guys.